Hey, gang. Welcome to another episode. First of all, I wanted to say thanks to everybody who's subscribed. Just topped the 50 subscriber mark, and we're at 51 subscribers. Not bad for a show about nothing that has zero promotion. So, appreciate it. Today, I'm going to be talking about some stuff that I found at an estate sale that I went to last week. So sit down, grab a cup of coffee, and we're going to talk about estate sales. Hey, welcome back. So those last few seconds were not a dig at Randy the Cheap Audio Man. I love his show. It's fun, it's cool, it's informative. I just realized as I was sitting here that I had a cup of coffee. I'm a white guy in my 40s with gray hair and glasses, and was like, yeah, wow. So it was more of an homage. All right. Last weekend, I went to my first estate sale. Well, sort of. I'd popped into one before because I saw that they had some vintage stereo equipment. This was last year sometime. And it started at 8. I got there at like 8:15, and two of the three things that I was looking at were gone, and the third one was being taken away by someone. So, but yeah, then I saw one coming up and was like, it had a butt ton of records. And as somebody who does a show about records who's getting to the end of his record collection, I thought maybe I should go and get some records. So that's what I did. And I also got something else as well. Now, right before that, I got a call from my stereo guy, place that I dropped off my tape deck. Yeah, this one right there, with the diagonal loading cassette bay and all that stuff that I believe I talked about in a previous video. And he said that I could pick it up, but he said he was not able to fix the problem because while he did change the belts, the problem was with the motor. Somebody had replaced the original motor with an aftermarket motor, and it wasn't really working, and it was burning out some wires, and he couldn't get his hands on a replacement original motor. So, but he did find some leaky capacitors in there. He swapped those out. Like I said, he changed two of the belts. There were two belts that I couldn't get to. I changed like the main belt by going underneath, but I couldn't get access to the other two belts for the counter. And more stuff that you probably don't care about. But at the estate sale, in addition to some records, I also picked up a cassette deck. Hold on, and I'll show it to you. Here it is. It's an Onkyo TAR 440 from the 90s, so it does kind of blend in with my 90s stereo that I also have going on with my Optimus, which is a rebadged Pioneer that Radio Shack sold in the 90s, Kenwood CD player, and now Onkyo TAR 440. It is a single deck cassette deck. It's got digital meters for the sound going so you can measure it, and if they get into the red, you better turn down the record level there or it could lead to some distortion. It's got forward and backward playback. You can set it in reverse mode so it just keeps looping and playing side A and side B. It has AccuBias, which does something, I'm sure, and Dolby noise reduction filters for if you have B or C type cassettes. So yeah, that was cool, and this was like super dirt cheap. And while it doesn't match the one that I have for my 70s silver stuff, I can at least record tapes, which is cool because I've been itching to do that for quite a while. I've got a stack of blank tapes that I need to go through and put stuff on. And here's some stuff that I've already recorded. I know I showed some of this, but this was all blank before, so now I've got the Star Trek 6 soundtrack. See, TDK tape, and I just printed up the label, plopped it into Photoshop to reduce it and set it to the right size, printed it up on some thick drawing paper, cut it, and now it looks like an official cassette. Because the album of this is unavailable as fuck. Fit a couple of Raconteurs albums on this one. Another Star Trek soundtrack, First Contact. Rocket from the Crypt. This album is very, very, very hard to find on vinyl, but now I've got it on cassette, and I think the other side I put Pink Floyd's Wish You Were Here, because that's an awesome album. I'm not a huge Pink Floyd fan, but I love that album, so maybe I'll talk about it one day. Star Trek Orchestra that I recorded off of YouTube. It's from Prague from like 10 years ago. And this, I haven't labeled it yet, but it is the Beths on one side and Danzig on the other side. Because that doesn't match at all. And even my daughter got into, she's making a mixtape, so she's got just random songs that she's putting on here. So I've been teaching her the art of that. And maybe I'm kind of on the lookout for a portable boombox with a CD player, and I mean with a cassette player in it, or if I can ever fix up that IMA Craig little alarm clock radio cassette player that I did a video on a little while ago. I managed to actually get the tape deck sounding playable on that thing, and it's like whenever, because it needs new belts, I'm guessing, because it's like really, really dragging. But if while the play button is pressed, if I sort of halfway push the rewind button, it speeds up the motor and it plays a tape. And I was listening to that Danzig tape last night on it, and it sounded perfect. So it can get fixed. I just need to figure out how, or find someone else who can figure out how. Now, back to the other tape deck that was not able to get fixed. This little guy down there. Let me scoot back a second so I can get it in the camera. Yeah, it was not able to get fixed, like I said, because of the motor, but I can still hook it up to my receiver so that when I'm listening to music, the little meters get going. I have the volume turned down right now. It's on the radio, but see, when you turn it up, you can hear and see that because this has meters on it too, but it only goes according to the volume. And being in a small room that my office/studio is in, I don't really crank the volume up too high. Plus, wife works at home, so I don't think she wants to listen to me blasting Star Trek soundtracks and whatever else is going on. But so these meters don't really move too much because the volume's like pretty low. But whenever I do crank it, you can see that it cranks up some and that the meters start going. But since this is just set to record level, I've just got a blank tape sitting in there, and I just hit the record button, so it pushes up that little tab and it makes it think that it's recording. But since I'm not pressing record and play at the same time, it's not putting any stress on the motor and burning out those wires that were the initial problem. So it's basically just a glorified meter, but it looks cool. And you know what? That's kind of why I got into vintage audio equipment in the first place. Let me flip the camera and expand on that. KK. So yeah, that might enrage or anger or even just mildly annoy some vintage audio equipment enthusiasts, but that's one of the joys of only having 50 subscribers is it's not going to really annoy that many people. But yeah, one of the main reasons why I got into vintage audio was because it looks cool. Yeah, it does. The meters, the lights, it's looks different than the stuff that's out now. It even looks different than the stuff from the 90s, from that black stereo that I showed you before. But even that looks different from the stuff that's now, which is like a lot more streamlined. Like, I love all the buttons. It's just buttons everywhere on like the 90s stuff. But yeah, the 70s stuff, like, it's cool looking. The silver, the knobs, the buttons also, but not a whole lot of buttons. And the meters, it's just cool looking. And sorry, I guess I'm not superficial and shallow. But the other reason why I got into it was because of the durability of the stuff. I mean, this shit's like 45 years old, if not older. And people have systems that are 50, 60 years old, and they're still around. So that to me says that if this stuff is maintained and properly even refurbished, it can last another 50 years, if not longer, as long as people are still making the parts and know how to fix them. So that's cool. So long after the V-Man is dead and gone, maybe this will live on either with my kid or with someone else who appreciates this stuff. So yeah, just superior build quality is why I got into it. Not so much the sound, which that might, I don't know, upset some folks too. Because I think most of that really comes from speakers, honestly. Yeah. Or even speaker arrangement or room size. Like, maybe it does come somewhat from the equipment itself, because I've heard people describe some pieces as, oh, it's got more of a warmer sound or fuller sound. Or what does warm sound mean? Sounds like a fucking blanket? I don't know. But I'm also a bit of a dum-dum when it comes to this, and I'll admit it. Anyway, back to the records that I didn't even talk about initially, so I can't get back to them. So let's get into the records that I got at the estate sale. I got 3, because there was a group of folks that got there way before we did. It started at 9 o'clock in the morning, and they started passing out tickets at 7 o'clock in the morning to see who would get in first. And there was even one lady and maybe someone else with her that were there since like 3:30 that morning. But apparently the whole crew at the front door, I was hearing other people say behind me, they're just these record hunters, and they hit all the sales, and they all knew each other. And whenever the doors opened, they went straight for the tables with the records. Get it, need it, want it, got it, need it. And were actually pretty rude too. Like, they had a couple of them right there, and then behind the records, they had some 70s stereo equipment, a Yamaha receiver, a CR220, and a Yamaha cassette deck underneath it. And I was just trying to squeeze in between the shoulders of 2 of the record guys, and I was polite. I was like, oh, excuse me a minute, and they was like, bleh. And I'm like, I'm not even after your albums, dude. I just want to check out the equipment behind it. And so, like, I had to, like, the 2 guys are right here. I'm like trying to squeeze in between them. And so I had to go around them, and there's like a wall right here. So I'm like squeezing in between one dude's stupid shoulders and then like the wall, just trying to look at a price tag of a couple of things. And everything was going to be half price like the next day. So, but the receiver powered on, and I brought headphones, but I did not bring an adapter to plug it in because it was the bigger size, and I had headphones with a smaller 3.5 millimeter jack. So I saw that it did power on, but I didn't really test it. and those were each like about $100 each, which is a good price for the receiver. If you wanted to flip it or even keep it, it was a low. I mean, it's like a 15 watt per channel receiver, but this is a small room, so it would have been fine. Anyway, the cassette deck did not turn whenever I powered it on, so I was like, no, don't even care about it. And yeah, I went back later when everything was half price. That's when I picked up that Onkyo. Tape deck was still there because, of course, it didn't work. But records that I got, which were like $4 or $5 a piece. Let's see what we got. Okay. First of all, Dave Clark 5's Greatest Hits. This is the often forgot about little brother of the Beatles to the British invasion. At least I remember seeing like old magazine covers from like, I don't know, fucking teen magazines from back in the 60s. It wasn't Cream or Tiger Beat, but there was one that was still like around in the 80s or 90s, and I recognized the names. And it was like, you know, stupid fluff articles about different bands, and it was like, Dave Clark 5 versus the Beatles, who will win? And each member had like either word balloons or thought bubbles coming out of them. And all I remember is like they put one coming from Ringo, because there's only 4 in the Beatles, and there's only 4 guys in the Fab Four. And can you guess how many are in the Dave Clark 5? 5. That's right. And Ringo, his little word balloon or thought bubble was like, 4 against 5, no fair, which I'm sure was a direct quote from Mr. Starkey. But anyway, I like the Dave Clark 5. I used to have their greatest hits on CD back in the day, but I don't have it anymore. I do believe I have it on MP3 for anyone who gives a shit, but it's got really good songs over and over and over again. It's gonna be all right. Everybody Knows. I don't remember that one. Can't you see that she's mine? Which also sounds, it's exactly musically the same as I Saw Her Standing There. Like whenever there's a musical break in this song where it's just some music, you could actually sing I Saw Her Standing There over it, and it fits in perfectly. Bits and pieces, bits and pieces. Yep. I like it like that. Catch us if you can. Because any way you want it. Do you love me? Glad all over. So yeah, good songs. All hits. Only one I can't think of how it goes is Everybody Knows. But great album. It is indeed. Hits. Another one that I got from back in around the same era. More of the Monkees. I loved this show when I was a kid. I remember catching the reruns on like Nickelodeon or TV Land or whatever it was during the day, and it was shot in that same like overly bright Technicolor. It was like Star Trek and 1966 Batman. And I actually thought whenever I was watching this that it was like an episode of Batman, and then like these guys come out, and I was like, is this like some villain group that I'd never heard of, or are they just trying to like rip off the Beatles or something like that, because they couldn't get the Beatles to star on this episode? And then it broke into the here we come, and I'm like, what the fudge ripple is this? And I was hooked, and I was like getting all into the Monkees. I'm asking my parents about them and stuff, and learning the history of it. And it's just really crazy that like all 3 of these guys are dead now, and they were just like little boys back then. But yeah, this one, it's not a greatest hits album, but it does have some good songs that I like. She told me that she loved me. When Love Comes Knocking at Your Door, don't know that one. Mary, Mary, why you bugging? That's what that was taken from. Hold On Girl, your Auntie Griselda. I'm not your stepping stone. Wow, they covered that from Minor Threat. Look out, here comes tomorrow, which was written by Neil Diamond. Kind of Girl I Could Love, don't know that one. Day We Fall in Love, or Sometime in the Morning. Laugh, don't know that one. And then the Shrek hit, I'm a Believer. I'm a believer in you, monkeys. They're phenomenal. See? I didn't make that up. That is actually the first Monkees album on vinyl that I've ever owned, despite being a big fan all these years. And I did see them play there's this Mardi Gras thing here called like Family Gras, and there's like this huge stage set up in the neutral ground, or median as the rest of the country calls it. And yeah, the Monkees were there, and I was working across the street at the time. I was in the marketing art department at Whole Foods, and the stage was right across from the parking lot. So I walked out and I heard the Monkees playing live. So that was really quite awesome. And now the final record that I got. Da, 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 da. Da, da, da. Da, 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 da. Superman! Fucking Superman. The movie. Soundtrack on vinyl. John Williams. Dude, what's up? Actually, my wife and my buddy Tim Laddie, who's also a comic book artist, my wife and I had an extra ticket to the concert. There was going to be me, her, and my daughter. But my daughter was out of town with her mom in Smoky Mountains of Tennessee. And so we gave the extra ticket to my buddy Laddie, who I know is a John Williams fan also. And then, yeah, that was like 2 weeks ago. And so then I stumbled upon this and was like, oh yeah, gotta get it. I love the second Superman movie more because it's just awesome, and there's no stupid spinning the planet around to fix something, which is just, what's the point of that? Because then you can just do that anytime something goes wrong. But the music on this is phenomenal. It is gorgeous. It is beautiful. But the record itself, what is this? It's opening up. It's a gatefold album because it's a double album. And look at that. You will believe a man could fly. Or man can fly. I forget what the tagline was for the movie. But there he is going through the Fortress of Solitude. I believe this picture is like right after he gets the crystal when he's like a teenager and he tosses it, and then he goes in and then he flies out as as Christopher Reeves, because before he was the other kid that was playing the teenage version of him. I think that might be what this is from. I haven't seen the movie in a couple of years, but that's the only time I remember him flying through the Fortress of Solitude, which you can see the crystals for in the background. All right, this is a 2-album soundtrack. One of the albums just was in a white sleeve. I don't know if that's how originally it was, or if it had something else and was replaced by that. So I just put it in my regular anti-static sleeve. But the other album was in. Look at that! It's black. Oh, but wait, on the other side, scenes from the movie. So freaking cool if I held it up the right way. And yeah, that's the kid that was, little Clark Kent that turned into Superman after throwing a crystal. He just aged 10 years. But yeah, scenes from the movie, which is just always cool. Dude, the train track scene, awesome. Daily Planet. Hey, it's Clark. Lois. Oh, man. Lex Luthor and Otis changing. Dude, the stance, the iconic. I mean, come on. Doesn't get much. Miss Tessmacher. Yeah, the records themselves were in pretty good shape. There are some crackles and pops from some scratches but I'm not complaining. The other two records. So they had some scuffs on them, but like it was more the recording quality was not its best. Hopefully those have been remastered in a digital format or even reissued on vinyl, because those two, no skips or anything, and the crackles, I don't really care about that, even if it's just like a while the music's playing. That doesn't bother me, but it was just like the quality, like the recording quality, the production was not that good on the Monkees and Dave Clark 5 ones, so that was a bit of a letdown, but not for the fault of the record or the record owner. Rest in peace, since this was an estate sale. But even if they were like in mint condition, just the quality of it. So if you're ever seeing those, just keep that in mind. But this, man, just amazing music. But there was one time, so I had these playing, and I was like on the other side of the house in the kitchen, like cooking or something, but I had speakers cranked up in here so I could hear it in there. And all of a sudden I hear like voice, like mumbling, talking, and I'm like, what the hell is that? My daughter's like, that's coming from your stereo. And it was, I don't know if you guys remember the movie much, but there is a scene when Lois is flying with Superman and the music's playing in the background. Gorgeous music. But she has that awful, like, poem that she's reading where she's like, can you read my mind? You're one of a kind. You can fly like a bird in the sky. You're so cool. I'm a fool, or whatever it was. Like, just completely cringy. And that is the start of side 3 on the soundtrack. So, whatever. It's goofy, but cool. Great record. Love it very much. I was just listening to it earlier this morning. So that's how big a fan I am. All right, well, that wraps up another rambly episode. And I think next time I'm going to get into the stuff that I found at another thing called Record Raid, which I think I might have shown a sticker for. It was my very first record convention that I went to back in October of last year. So about like 5 months ago. Because it's March now, in case this is discovered in the future. And there's no time stamp on it. So yeah, that's what we'll get into then. Until then, ladies and gentlemen, have a blessed day.